Hey, yo, what is going on, everybody? It is power ranking time for Duel Links. You guys know how it is. It's been a while since we did a Duel Links one, but let's talk about the metagame in Duel Linkadinka since we've gotten the last box. Huge changes to the metagame. I'm talking massive. Again, for those that don't watch the Master Duel videos that I put out, no webcam because I do have an eye infection that should hopefully be cleared up soon. My appointment's coming up. I'm okay. I'm feeling a lot better already. I'm sure by next week, everything will be back to normal for me when it comes to the YouTube scene. So, let's get into it without further delay. What is going on in Duel Links? We had a busy month for Duel Links. Lots and lots of tournaments to go over. You guys know the drill. This is the point system that we do based on where you finish with a deck in our tournaments, as long as they are Swiss tournaments. Last time I misspoke and mentioned the single elimination tournaments. That is a Master Duel specific thing, as we run a lot more single elim events there because Master Duel takes a long time to get through all of the events, where Duel Links, you can just finish it in a day, and it's usually not that bad. 6 points for first place, second point for fourth place, third and fourth, you get the 2 points, fifth to eighth, 1 point. The higher you place, the more points you earn for your deck. The tournaments that we'll be going over is GG Tour X DLE 27 and 28. All of the battle phases we've had: 390, 391, 392, 393, Meta Weekly 229, and the Ruby League as well. Will be all of the tournaments that we took our data from. Let's get into it. In fifth place, we have Odd Eyes. Usually considered the second best deck in the previous metagame, has pretty much fallen into last place, barely making it into the power rankings. You can see top 4s, top 8s. Unfortunately, anything this deck can do, DDD can just do it better right now. This deck doesn't really have a place in the current metagame. You know, this metagame is definitely warped by two decks, DDD and Burning Abyss. Those are the two decks that you gotta beat, and unfortunately, this deck just doesn't do well against those decks. And it is what it is. It's just one of those decks that's going to be power crept. Which is really unfortunate because this deck is super expensive to play. I'm just looking at all of these box URs in here, and if you were one of the unfortunate souls to actually go and purchase this Odd Eyes deck, I got some bad news for you, man. It is unfortunately no longer a competitively viable deck. I mean, obviously it's still good for King of Games, no problems there. But yeah, just the Xseed monsters that it summons is just not as strong in this metagame. We don't need Ebon Illusion for non-targeting. You don't, need things like Meteor Burst Dragon to stop hand traps or anything like that. You need like stronger monsters in terms of body, higher effect monsters, non-targeting monsters, non-banishable monsters, ways to stop yourself getting lethal if your monsters get banished, etc, etc, etc. And unfortunately, I think Odd Eyes is pretty much out of the meta. Still earn 9 points. I think one thing I want everyone to pay attention to as we go through these decks is the point differential. How different is the points between the decks? Because this one's insane, let me tell you. Fourth place, we got ourselves Necros. Necros managed to get into first place. Same points, 9 points, but they have a tournament win. And what a tournament win. GG Tour number 28. If you guys don't know, GG Tour is the largest Duel Links event that's still hosted by us. Join the Discord if you'd like to play in it. We do it twice a month, essentially. And this deck is actually insane. This is the most recent event that this was able to win in, and this deck has a pretty damn good matchup against Burning Abyss and DDD itself. If you actually go watch the finals, which is the last video I posted, you will see this guy, Komen, not only defeat the finalist Burning Abyss very handedly. You will also see me talk about how he only faced Burning Abyss top 32 and onwards, and he beat every single one. He beat 5 Burning Abyss players in a row and 4 DDD players in Swiss in a row. And there's plenty of reasons for that. They play Ritual Cage with this deck. So if they go first, they can play Ritual Cage and Burning Abyss can't target any of his monsters. And if they happen to go second, they can go and try to summon, Trishula. They can try and summon the Necros Bryonic, and all of these monsters have ways to get rid of problematic boss monsters, right? The Bryonic lets you send back extra deck monsters, which is really strong because DDD and Burning Abyss are both extra deck reliant decks. They're heavily reliant on those extra deck ace monsters to kind of get their game state going. So Necros is extremely powerful when we're in a metagame where essentially you are dealing with a lot of side or extra deck monsters. This deck is going to be really, really good. If I had to make a tier list right now, obviously Burning Abyss and DDD would be tier 1, and then I would put Necros as like tier 3, aka the anti-meta tier, because I think the format that's shifting right now is there's 2 very good decks. There's Burning Abyss, there's DDD, and then the second tier, there's nothing. Nothing comes close to their power level. And then that third tier is kind of like those anti-meta decks that are built specifically to beat those decks. Necros with the Ritual Cage. I know it says Master of Rights on here. That's actually an error. It is the Ritual Cage, or maybe it was side decked. I don't really remember. But I do believe it was main decked. The Ritual Cage version of Necros is made specifically to counter Burning Abyss and DDD, and it did very, very well. Fun fact, this is the only quote-unquote low-tier deck on the power rankings that has a first-place finish. Everything else performed pretty bad, and we'll get into it as we talk about third place Galaxy Eyes. Listen, getting third place isn't that bad, but this is why I want to focus on that point differential. You can see they have no first place finishes. Galaxy Eye is extremely powerful. It's actually kind of sad because this deck would have been meta, would have probably been tier 1, tier 2 in the previous meta when we had Gandora, when we had DDD, when we had Phantom Knights, all of those decks. All those decks are dead, right? Gandora, Phantom Knight, all those decks, they're gone and dead. They're no longer relevant when it comes to competitive, KCGT or competitive tournaments. So it's really sad because this deck could have been really, really good. It's still okay, especially if you bought it for the ladder. I don't want to make it sound like you wasted your money, but to be fair, at least you got Burning Abyss at the same time, because that is definitely the winner of this box. This deck's okay. It's kind of got like the Zodiac effect where your Photon Dragon can, XC summon into a whole bunch of your extra deck monsters, and it's decent. It's cool to see when it happens. But unfortunately, no grind game just doesn't work in this Burning Abyss-centric meta. And even if you have this deck, all it really does is just pops a bunch of cards, right? I mean, look at the extra deck. You got the full armor monsters, they pop face-up cards. You got the Cypher Dragon that can steal a monster, but you can't lethal after you steal a monster. Usually, it's very difficult to do so. You've got the Neo Galaxy Eyes. All it does is negate face-up cards, and that's not usually that useful in a metagame where Beatrice is around and is extremely powerful and can just chain to the effect and still get something out of her effect. Heliopolis, Destruction, Cypher, pop a card, Saphinode, and that's the other one, the Flying Fortress Saphinode. That was really, DDD could just play that, and then boom, this deck essentially gets shut down. You could see 14 points. You would say, oh man, third place, that's so good, but then you go boom, second place DDD with 30 points. Holy crap, 30 points is usually first place on these power rankings, but it's only second place when it comes to DDD. DDD, they won one tournament, and it was a big one of the GG tours. They were able to win. Standard stuff from them, nothing too crazy. Some DDDs have taken up to using the Cypher cards, which is pretty cool to see, but ultimately all ends up kind of being the same thing. Whether they use the Cypher cards or not, it usually ends up just being the same strategy, just turboing out, the high Genghis, try to get as many high body monsters on the board, and then control your opponent with back row, being able to bring out that Gian Trainer and draw 3 cards. So, draw the Book of Moon, draw the Econ, draw, whatever cards you're trying to draw. Is kind of the idea. There's nothing too crazy new with DDD specifically. Extremely powerful skill, extremely powerful deck, continuing to perform really, really well in these tournaments. But now we get into first place, and look at this jump from 30 points to 53. Holy shit. That is not something you usually see. Burning Abyss with the Mind of the Plana. Burning Abyss is hands down the best deck right now. And DDD is the only deck that even comes close to touching it, honestly. Sometimes I'm even tempted to just say, like, Burning Abyss is the best deck, and then you've got DDD as the second best deck, and then you have, like, a whole bunch of anti-meta decks like Necros in Tier 3. But you'll see why I didn't necessarily, that wasn't necessarily my opinion as we, go on with the graphics. But look at this, man. First place Meta Weekly 229, first place Ruby League 88, first place BP 390, 391, 392, 393. All first places. Second place in GG Tour. 2 second places in GG Tour. They haven't won a GG Tour, but they've gotten second place multiple times. It's insane. It's absolutely nuts. This deck keeps winning tournaments. It hasn't won one of the big $500 tournaments, but it's only a matter of time if it doesn't receive a nerf. And realistically, it probably will receive a nerf because there's a lot of old Burning Abyss cards on here, like Farfa, etc., that were released a long time ago that could potentially see nerfs, but we'll talk about that in a different video. What we're going to talk about in this video is how powerful this deck is. Beatrice is one of the, if not the strongest boss monster we have ever seen in this game. Usually when you have a boss monster, there's a way to deal with them, right? You have Forbidden Chalice to turn off their effects. You have Book of Moon to flip them down, to force a bad activation. You have, whatever, Lightning Vortex to pop them because they're untargetable, whatever the case may be. Beatrice is so difficult to deal with. It's actually funny because the Beatrice, let's say you try to Book of Moon her, she can still change her effect and detach a material that usually has, is usually like a Dante, because you have to go from Dante to Beatrice, which will already give you like Burning Abyss resources. And then on top of that, you're able to send a card anyway, like a Kiteroid. So while it's not, you can't send a Farfa to disrupt your opponent or something, you can still send a Kiteroid, right? If you try to Book a Moon, if you try to chain Chalice, you get something out of Beatrice. The fact that she can detach for cost and get you, free search or free add back with Dante. The fact that she can, she can get Farfa to banish a card when trying to set up your plays. She can get a Lich to negate a monster effect that you have. She can do so much just by summoning her, and some hands can, like the God hand is putting up 2 of these motherfuckers on the board, you know what I mean? And then that's not even counting to, if you don't have an answer to her. If you don't have an answer to her, she's floating on destruction. She's disrupting your plays. She's able to set up for lethal by taking out your plays and Mind of the Pawn of them, right away. And it's just been kind of gnarly. It's just been gnarly. There isn't many decks that can break the stall of Burning Abyss. There's not very many decks that can handle the OTK of Burning Abyss. There's not many decks that can handle the grind game of Burning Abyss, and we can see that with how many raw number of tournament wins that this deck has compared to other decks right now, and that's how they can score very highly on these power rankings. Why I brought up Necros when I want to talk about the finals of Necros, what makes them extremely good against Burning Abyss. We talked about the Ritual Cage, but also, being able to play around that Beatrice, right? Like, oh, I'm going to summon Bryonic. Bryonic himself threatens lethal, or not threatens lethal, but threatens the Beatrice, and then they get rid of Beatrice. Well, now, I can bring out Trishula, and Burning Abyss, they're a deck that wants to have cards in their graveyard, wants to have cards in their hand, wants to have cards on the field. So it's extremely hard to play around that Trishula effect when you get into Burning Abyss, and that's why that's kind of emerging as an anti-meta deck to this deck. So let's get into the pie chart. What do we have here? This is what kind of kept DDD in my mind still as that tier 1 deck, even though it's kind of slipping a little bit. DDD, the conversion rate into top 8, they are the highest, even though they don't have as many tournament wins. Most of the people ending up in top 8 are DDD players at 28%, Burning Abyss right behind them at 24, and then everything else is pretty much pathetic, right? You have Galaxy Eyes, you have Odd Eyes, Necros, Fire King, and then just a whole bunch of other decks that, happen to scooch their way up into the rankings. So there you go, boys. If you want my opinion, DDD, Burning Abyss, they're the 2 best decks. We are in a 2-deck format as far as I'm concerned. Two-deck format essentially means that there are two decks, dictating the metagame, DDD and Burning Abyss, and then the third category of deck is anything anti-meta that counters those two. So in my opinion, the best choice for that would be Necros, but someone might come up with a different deck list that plays Ritual Cage to counter Burning Abyss, and that would be considered anti-meta. Regardless, this meta is one of those metas where you don't really have a tier list, more so you have, these are the two decks. They're extremely good. They dictate the entire metagame, and whatever deck you decide to play has to counter these two decks at the same time, because you're going to be facing a whole bunch of these decks. This is similar to like when it was Dark Lord versus Dark Lord versus Blue Eyes, or Noble Knight versus Desperado. Any other time we've had two deck metas, there really isn't a tier list. It's just those are the best decks, and this is how you counter them if you don't want to play those two decks. So there you go. You guys let me know if you like the meta that we currently are in. I don't know if I necessarily like it. I definitely like the meta we were in before because of how diverse it is. This meta does not really take diversity into account, and while I'm a fan of the decks that are being played, like DDD, Burning Abyss, Necros, I think it's going to get old very quickly, and I think that we actually do need a rather hefty ban list with this KCGT, or we will be in for a stale meta in the upcoming months, because two deck formats are rarely ever fun in Duel Links. Konami, I'm sure you'll do something, but oh my god, it is insane how powerful the top two decks are compared to the rest of the metagame. That's going to be it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Till the next video, peace out, boys.